Have you ever wondered what truly happened during the 10 plagues of Egypt? Behind this fascinating biblical account lies a story of spiritual confrontation, gods being humiliated, and a liberation that changed the course of history forever. These plagues weren't just natural disasters. They were deliberate acts of a sovereign God, designed to reveal his power and show the world who he truly is. What if I told you that every detail in this narrative carries a profound meaning, one that could transform how you understand the Bible, and even your own life? Together, we'll uncover the deeper significance behind each plague and how they point to something much greater. The truth is, these events were not merely a relic of the past. They echo through history, inviting us to discover the essence of a God who transforms and liberates. Before we dive into this incredible journey, I want to invite you to join our community by subscribing to the channel and hitting the like button on this video. It helps us share these transformative stories with even more people. And here's a quick challenge for you. Leave a comment with your name and where you're watching from. Let's connect and explore this powerful narrative together. The story of the 10 plagues of Egypt is far more than a historical narrative. It's a powerful demonstration of God's sovereignty and his ability to confront oppression and false beliefs. Each plague carries profound spiritual significance, revealing God's authority over creation and his unmatched power to deliver his people. If we fail to understand the deeper meaning behind these plagues, we risk overlooking the lessons they teach us about God's justice, mercy, and his plan for redemption. These plagues weren't just acts of judgment. They were designed to expose the futility of human pride, the fragility of false gods, and the ultimate power of the one true God. On the other hand, by diving into the purpose and symbolism of the plagues, we can gain a clearer understanding of how God works to free his people, confront evil, and reveal his character to the world. This isn't just a story about ancient Egypt. It's a message that speaks to us today, reminding us of God's ability to intervene in the most challenging circumstances and bring liberation to those who trust in him. The story of the 10 plagues unfolds in one of the most powerful and advanced civilizations of the ancient world, Egypt. Renowned for its towering pyramids, intricate temples, and fertile Nile River, Egypt was not just a hub of economic and cultural prosperity. It was also a deeply religious society, where the Pharaoh was considered a living god. At the time, Egypt was a colossus of wealth and influence, dominating much of the known world. The Nile River was its lifeblood, providing sustenance and enabling agriculture, trade, and transportation. Its rulers, the pharaohs, were seen as divine intermediaries, tasked with maintaining balance and order through their connection to the gods. Yet, behind this facade of strength and stability lay a system that enslaved an entire people. The Israelites, once welcomed as guests during Joseph's leadership, the descendants of Jacob had become laborers under cruel oppression. According to Exodus 1, the Pharaoh viewed the growing number of Israelites as a threat to Egypt's security and power. In response, he subjected them to forced labor, making them build cities like Pithom and Ramesses. This was a deliberate strategy to break their spirit and limit their growth as a nation. But Pharaoh's oppressive measures didn't stop there. In a final, desperate act to control the Israelites, he issued a horrifying decree. Every male Israelite newborn was to be thrown into the Nile River. This brutal order set the stage for one of the most extraordinary interventions in history. Despite the oppression, the Israelites cried out to God, and their prayers did not go unheard. Exodus 2 verses 24 to 25 tells us that God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He saw their suffering and began to set his plan of liberation into motion. The oppression of the Israelites and the divine response is a story of contrast. The might of an earthly empire versus the power of a sovereign God. While Pharaoh sought to crush their hope, God was preparing to demonstrate his authority and fulfill his promises. The cultural and historical backdrop of Egypt sets the stage for the dramatic events of the 10 plagues. It's a tale of a seemingly invincible empire oppressing a chosen people, and of a God who steps in to deliver them. This context helps us understand the magnitude of what's about to unfold. not just as a clash between nations, but as a spiritual confrontation that would change history. The 10 plagues of Egypt were not random acts of destruction, but deliberate demonstrations of God's sovereignty and justice. Each plague targeted specific aspects of Egyptian culture, religion, and economy, revealing the powerlessness of their gods and the futility of their trust in false idols. This spiritual confrontation was not only a judgment on Egypt, but also a message to the Israelites and the entire world about the supremacy of the one true God. Each plague was a calculated strike against a key element of Egyptian life, many of which were tied to their pantheon of gods. The Nile turning to blood, Exodus 7 verses 14 to 24, the Nile River, considered sacred and a source of life, was associated with the god Hapi, who symbolized fertility. By turning its waters to blood, God demonstrated his power over what the Egyptians viewed as divine. The plague of frogs, Exodus 8 verses 1 to 15, frogs were connected to the goddess Hecate, symbolizing fertility and renewal. Their overwhelming presence and subsequent death symbolized the reversal of what they were thought to represent. Darkness over the land, Exodus 10 verses 21 to 29, this plague directly challenged Ra, the sun god and one of the most revered deities in Egypt, showing that even their source of light and life was under God's control. Through these and other plagues, God systematically dismantled the Egyptians' belief in their gods, exposing their inability to protect or provide for their people. Pharaoh wasn't just a political leader. He was considered a divine figure in Egyptian culture, embodying the will of the gods. His refusal to let the Israelites go was not merely an act of political resistance. It was a spiritual defiance against God's authority. The plagues were a direct challenge to Pharaoh's perceived divinity, progressively breaking down his resistance and revealing his limitations. His hardened heart became a key element in the narrative, demonstrating the consequences of pride and rebellion against God. For the Israelites, the plague served as a powerful reminder of God's faithfulness and his ability to deliver them from oppression. Each act was not just a judgment on Egypt, but also a reassurance to God's people that he had not forgotten his covenant with them. The distinction made between the Egyptians and the Israelites in certain plagues, such as the protection of Goshen during the plagues of flies and hail, Exodus 8 verses 22 to 23, 9:26, was a visible sign of God's care for his chosen people. The plagues demonstrated that God's power extended over every aspect of life: water, land, animals, health, and even the celestial bodies. This wasn't just a display of might. It was a declaration of his rightful rule over all creation. Each plague carried a dual message. To the Egyptians, it was a warning and judgment. To the Israelites, it was a promise of redemption and a call to trust in God's provision. The spiritual significance of the 10 plagues goes beyond the judgment of Egypt. It is a testament to God's supremacy, his faithfulness to his promises, and his ability to confront and dismantle any system or power that opposes him. This narrative invites us to reflect on the idols we may rely on and reminds us of God's unparalleled authority and care for his people. The culmination of the 10 plagues was not just a physical liberation of the Israelites from slavery, but also a spiritual and moral lesson about God's power, justice, and unwavering commitment to his promises. Through these events, God established a legacy of redemption and faithfulness that continues to resonate throughout history. The final plague, the death of the firstborn, Exodus 12 verses 29 to 30, was the most devastating. It struck at the heart of Egyptian society, from the Pharaoh's palace to the homes of the common people. Even their livestock was affected. This event highlighted that no one, regardless of status or power, could stand against God's judgment. This plague also carried deep spiritual symbolism. The Pharaoh, who was regarded as a divine being, lost his own son, the heir to the throne. This was a direct challenge to Pharaoh's perceived divinity and a decisive act that broke his resistance. Before the final plague, God instructed the Israelites to observe the first Passover, Exodus 12 verses 1 to 28. Each household was to sacrifice a lamb without blemish, spread its blood on the doorposts, and eat the lamb in preparation for their journey. The blood on the doorpost served as a sign for God to pass over their homes, sparing them from the plague. This act of obedience not only protected them from judgment, but also foreshadowed the ultimate redemption through Jesus Christ, the Lamb of God. John 1 verse 29. The Passover became a defining moment for the Israelites, marking their transition from slavery to freedom and serving as a reminder of God's deliverance for generations to come. After the final plague, Pharaoh finally relented and allowed the Israelites to leave. Exodus 12 verses 31 to 32. The Egyptian people, overwhelmed by the devastation, urged them to go and even gave them gold, silver, and other valuables, fulfilling God's promise that they would leave with abundance. Exodus 3 verses 21 to 22. This moment was not just a physical liberation, but a spiritual one, as the Israelites were freed from the oppressive system of Egypt and began their journey toward the fulfillment of God's covenant. The entire narrative of the plagues and the Exodus emphasizes God's faithfulness to his promises. From his covenant with Abraham to the deliverance of the Israelites, God demonstrated that he is a God who acts on behalf of his people. This story serves as a reminder that God is always present, even in times of suffering, and that he uses every situation, even the hardest ones, for his purposes. The liberation of the Israelites holds timeless lessons for believers. God's power is unmatched. The plagues show that no force, earthly or spiritual, can stand against him. Obedience leads to redemption. The Israelites' act of faith during the Passover exemplifies how trust in God brings deliverance. God cares for his people. Through the distinction he made between the Israelites and Egyptians, God showed his special care and protection for those who are his. Judgment is real, but so is mercy. While Egypt faced judgment, God provided a way of escape for those who trusted in him. The liberation from Egypt is not just a historical event, but a spiritual metaphor for God's power to free us from bondage, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual. The story of the 10 plagues teaches us to trust in God's sovereignty, obey his commands, and remember his faithfulness in every circumstance. This legacy of redemption and faithfulness continues to inspire believers today, reminding us that the same God who delivered the Israelites is still at work in our lives, offering freedom and hope to those who trust in him. The story of the 10 plagues of Egypt is a profound testament to God's sovereignty, justice, and faithfulness. Each plague was a deliberate act, demonstrating his power over creation, false gods, and human pride. Through these events, God revealed not only his authority, but also his deep care for his people, keeping his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The plagues were more than just judgments on Egypt. They were messages to the entire world. They showed that no earthly power, no false deity, and no hardened heart could withstand the true God. They also underscored a vital truth. God is patient, giving opportunities for repentance, but his justice will not be delayed forever. For the Israelites, the plagues marked the beginning of their journey to freedom. Through the Passover, God provided a way of escape and a lasting symbol of redemption. This event foreshadowed the ultimate sacrifice of Jesus Christ, whose blood brings salvation to all who trust in him. Today, the story of the plagues invites us to reflect on our own lives. What Egypts hold us captive? What Pharaohs do we allow to harden our hearts? And most importantly, are we willing to trust in God's power to deliver us, just as he delivered his people long ago? As we look at this powerful narrative, we're reminded that God is both a righteous judge and a merciful redeemer. His power is unmatched, his promises are unshakable, and his love for his people is eternal. If this video has helped you see the story of the 10 plagues in a new light, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. And here's a thought-provoking question. What lesson from the 10 plagues stood out to you the most? Share your reflections in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and may you continue to experience the freedom and hope that only God can bring. Stay blessed.